This took place in front of everyone, loudly, publicly, and completely shocking. During a public meeting, a former American Navy veteran was kicked out by a sitting member of Congress. Mike Lawler, a moderate Republican from New York, was greeted with a loud protest from his own voter, Roberto Garicano. But instead of answering his question, Lawler did something unexpected. He had Garicano, a veteran, removed from the meeting. Imagine that. A serviceman silenced and thrown out simply for demanding answers. This wasn't just a public meeting, it was a symbol of a much deeper issue in American politics. But here's the twist. It's not an isolated incident. This is happening again and again across the country. And this is just the beginning. You need to understand why this matters. It's not a one-off occurrence. This is a phenomenon repeating across MAGA Republican town halls. Each time, the scene is the same. Elected officials who claim to be moderates but end up acting in extreme ways. Take Mike Lawler, for example, who presents himself as a moderate. But his actions betray this image. Why would an elected official refuse to answer a legitimate question from a veteran? And why throw out someone who served their country for 6 years? Doesn't that seem deeply disconnected from what an elected official is supposed to represent? Is this kind of behavior really acceptable in a democracy? Imagine yourself in the shoes of this voter. You voted for him, you trusted him, and this is how he responds. This goes beyond the specific incident. It's a sign of a system where politics is increasingly detached from the real concerns of citizens. So what's the real question here? Why has politics evolved to this point of no return? Here's a simple fact. This isn't the first time it's happened. Another elected official, another voter thrown out. And this time it was a veteran. Garicano, a man who gave 6 years of his life to serve his country, was thrown out like an intruder. "I'm a veteran. Why won't you answer my question?" he asked. But instead of responding, Lawler took the easy route: expulsion. There's something deeply troubling about this response. Is this kind of behavior really acceptable for an elected official? And why not answer a simple question, especially when it comes from a man who risked his life for the nation? But here's what's not being said aloud. This silence, this eviction, is actually an answer in itself. It shows the disconnection between elected officials and their voters. What happened at that meeting isn't just a misunderstanding, nor an isolated mistake. It's a symptom of a situation getting worse. Every time elected officials are faced with difficult questions, they choose to distract, to avoid, rather than face the truth. Garicano's eviction is a reminder of other episodes like this, where officials don't respond to their voters, but instead protect themselves behind their supporters or allies. Think about history. This resembles a return to a system where those in power become more and more isolated, more and more disconnected from the people's concerns. What should be a public, open, and honest conversation turns into a spectacle where questions are avoided and the truth is manipulated. If you start to see this kind of behavior as normal, this is where things really begin to deteriorate. But what does this mean for the future of American politics? The situation is only getting worse. When Mike Lawler is confronted with allegations of election fraud, he doesn't hesitate to repeat baseless theories. There seems to be fraud, he says about the California elections, without any solid evidence. But where the story becomes even more striking is when he chooses not to answer a direct question about his own party's actions. When asked to justify Trump's policy of mass deportation, he talks about the Bible. Yes, you heard that right. Instead of giving a clear, coherent answer, he turns the policy into a theological debate. He talks about the Old Testament, biblical borders, and the need to assimilate immigrants. What you need to take away here is the massive disconnect between what he says and what he does. This isn't just a difference of opinion, it's a distortion of realities to further his personal agenda. You can't ignore this kind of behavior anymore. It changes everything. And here's what's truly disturbing. Many other elected officials are following exactly the same model. Events are unfolding at a dizzying pace. First, an official refuses to answer a veteran. Then he repeats dubious theories about elections. But that's not all. The situation becomes even more explosive when other voices like Counselor Teresa Kenney encourage him to go further. She calls for Garicano's immigration papers to be checked. This is a new escalation in the intimidation of voters. What was once a simple question quickly becomes an act of denial of citizens. But wait, there's more. Controversial elections, fraud allegations, and now a debate on mass deportation that turns into a religious justification. All of this piles crises upon crises. The most worrying thing is that this dynamic has become the norm. This is no longer an isolated incident. It's a sign of what awaits us if this behavior becomes commonplace. And if this spiral continues, what will happen next? This isn't just a matter of elected officials and politicians. What's happening here is a direct attack on people like you and me. These decisions have a real impact every day on the lives of ordinary citizens. Take Garicano, a veteran who served his country for 6 years. He's not just a member of the military. He's a man who sacrificed part of his life to defend the values that many of us hold dear. And yet, instead of being listened to, he's thrown out, ignored. This isn't just a personal injustice. It's a reflection of how thousands of Americans feel ignored and invisible in their own country. People are tired. Tired of being treated like pawns in a political game where no one seems to really care about what matters to them: affordable health care, decent wages, a dignified life. And it's not just Garicano who's left behind. There are millions more. If this reality feels familiar, say so in the comments. This isn't just a matter of individuals. What we're seeing here is the expression of a much larger system, one that values spectacle over reality. Why do officials like Lawler act this way? Because they're driven by far more powerful forces than the will of the people. Their interests are rooted in networks of influence, political pressures, and strategies that primarily serve their own goals. All of this is allowed by a system that encourages indifference, where political speculation and the pursuit of personal power outweigh the real needs of the population. This culture of inaction, avoidance, and manipulation has infiltrated all levels of politics. It's a model where public opinion is manipulated, facts are distorted, and where truth is just one option among many. What's even more disturbing is that this mechanism is carefully hidden behind speeches of compassion, faith, and patriotism. And no one talks about it. Not frankly, not clearly. Now let's look at what could happen. There are two possible paths. On one hand, we could continue down this road with more and more politicians escaping responsibility, despising their voters, and avoiding any confrontation with reality. If this happens, frustration will continue to grow and this sense of injustice will firmly take root. But on the other hand, there's real potential for change that could come from a new generation of elected officials, more responsible, more open to tough questions, more in touch with the real needs of the people. The problem? This change won't come on its own. It will take courage, concrete actions, and voices willing to rise up against the machine. The biggest challenge will be whether people will finally wake up and mobilize before it's too late. The question isn't whether change will come, but when and in what form. That moment is already approaching. Here's what we know. This system, these power dynamics, are changing all of us. What once seemed unthinkable is gradually becoming normal. The truth? Those in power no longer hear us, see us, or respect us. But there's a deeper reality here. There is still time to react. If we act now, if we make our voices heard clearly and strongly, this system can still be overturned. But it won't be easy, and it will require each of us to choose what role we will play in this fight for a more just future. In the meantime, stay tuned. What's happening today is laying the groundwork for the battles of tomorrow. Keep an eye on this story because the next chapter has already begun. If you want to understand what's really going to happen, subscribe and stay with us for the analysis to come.